The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
But what is the purpose of this progression? It's what you are. If you look at what you are, logic, and you look at evolutionary biology, look at how we from Stardust evolved to what we've become today, our ability to even think is exactly what our purpose is. So when you say what is the purpose of this progression? It's what we are. It's what we're designed to do. So you wonder yeah, but why? But that's the reason why we even can ask the question. When you think about purpose, you're thinking about a concept that has been created, literally created by humans, and is also contextualized by humans. So if you take humans out of the equation and you get what is the purpose of the universe, you're actually doing something that is illogical, because you always need to see the subjective reference frame as part of the equation. And it's exactly because we have come up with purpose because of evolutionary biology that we can give it context. And that is something that a lot of people don't realize when they think about purpose. They detach it from humans. But purpose is defined because of humans. Your whole theory suggests that humanity requires very little to be happy. And isn't that the whole goal, to be happy? No, the goal is not to be happy. Happiness is a side effect that has evolved through evolution in order to allow you to survive. And the funny thing is, I'm actually using happiness as a way to make progress, because on a fundamental level, your core value is connected to your reward center. So let's say it's comfort. Whenever you are comfortable, you feel good. But let's say that it's your family. Whenever you're with your family, you feel good. Let's say it's fitting in. Then whenever you're fitting in, you feel good. So basically, we have finally figured out how on a neurological level, on an emotional level, we just value logic, and then every time you do something logical, your reward center makes you feel good. So literally, by just being logical, you will feel good. And since logic is literally our other part of the brain that is more rational, you don't experience duality anymore. We finally understood how to literally connect happiness with logic on a fundamental level because of our understanding in neuroscience. Poof, everything gets solved. That's why this is a psychological revolution, because it's even easy to do. Some people do it in 1 hour, in 10 minutes. There's people that clicked in 10 minutes, totally different person, because suddenly everything that is logical rewards them, because on a fundamental level, they've reprogrammed themselves. Anima D&D says, it's hard for me to grasp, but the idea is to apply logic to everything that you want to change about your core value. No, that's not what it is. I've explained this quite a lot of times, and I'm going to say it again. Basically, as we evolved, humanity evolved, we developed a more rational part of the brain that allowed us to outperform all other species. 70,000 years ago, the cognitive revolution started. We started gathering in bigger groups, and we started dominating the planet. Around 12,000 BC, we started the agricultural revolution, and in 1500 we had the scientific revolution. And what you basically have is the ability to think rationally developed a lot more, and our scientific understanding was basically using our rational part of the brain in order to progress. But we never really understood our emotional part, and we've always been emotionally driven at the core. So basically what's happening now is, since we understand how the brain works on a fundamental level, we can actually go to our core on an emotional level and connect our emotional desire to logic instead. That requires, of course, to believe in logic and love logic. If you don't love logic or believe in logic, you can't do that. So that requires you to get some insight, and I will also try and do so by showing some, very inspirational, powerful, logical videos. So you just know you have a strong faith on logic. The moment you do that, the moment you go to your core and you change your core by making it feel more negative rather than positive loaded, the inner child in you will want to hug something new. And if you then grab on logic, what you do is everything you then do from then on will make you feel rewarded. And that's why it causes a chain reaction and causes a revolution, because you're literally starting to do logical actions all the time. And as a result, you feel rewarded every time you do logical stuff. And as a result, you basically strengthen your faith in logic more and more and more, and your life just changes. Wikiyat is correct. Athene, if I get this right, clicking is the result of the process of shifting your paradigm to one that rewards logic. Exactly. That's exactly it. But what you're saying there is too abstract, because people can hear that and go how does that work? Basically, if you explain it on a neuroscientific level how it works, you have your reward center, and then you have your instinct for safety. And basically, as you grow up through social conditioning and approval seeking, you learn what gives you safety, and that's an emotion you connect to the reward center. So if it's, for example, comfort, whenever you comfort, you feel rewarded. Or when it's family, whenever you're with family, you feel rewarded. Or when it's fitting in, whenever you fit in, you feel rewarded. But now you know how this process works. You go to your core, you load it negatively because it's not what you are, it's not logical to do. And the moment you feel negative about your core, you as a child want to push it away. And the thing is that if you love logic, because that's the first step, and you really trust it, you will hug logic instead. And from there on, whenever you do something logical, you feel rewarded. And that's where the exponential change starts. It's a very simple system, and it's very similar how religion works. Like there's people that start believing in God, and what they basically do on a fundamental level is very similar. They go to the core, that is comfort or whatever, and they feel like it's not enough. And then suddenly they go like, I have this Jesus guy or God, he has infinite love, I'll just grab that one. And then suddenly God or Jesus just rewards him. Whenever he reads the Bible, he feels rewarded or whatever. When he goes to the church, he feels rewarded. It's the same system, but you do it with logic. And the difference between God and logic or comfort or whatever else is that logic is actually what you are. Logic is not a fraud. Logic is not a lie. Logic is literally what defines everything around us. So you're actually, instead of following the path of God and trying to understand God by reading the Bible, you follow the path of logic, and instead you try to understand logic, and by understanding logic, you literally improve your life. And at start, it requires you to increase your faith in logic by doing logical stuff, by understanding stuff logically. And it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and you just become a different being in like no time. That's how it works. This is just the science of how religion works. So basically the way religion works is on a fundamental core level, emotionally, you attach the love for God to your reward center and the love for Jesus. And then suddenly what you do is everything in your life that shows your understanding to God or Jesus makes you feel good. And that's why when you convert to Catholicism or whatever, your behavior habits change from one moment to another. It's scientifically documented everywhere. And basically what this is like everybody has their own faith, It can be comfort. In society today, it's mainly comfort. It can be fitting in. It can be whatever. So basically what you do is you use this insight in neuroscience to connect, rather than believing in God, to your reward center. You do it with logic. As a result, what happens, you go to the same catharsis, which is similar to one that you go through when you become religious. And we have all these spiritual people talk about it. So you experience that catharsis. And whenever you do something logical, your reward center gets stimulated. So obviously you're going to change overnight. So there's literally people that have clicked, and in 10 minutes, they're completely a different person. They just start seeing everything properly. Because before you were clouded. You were clouded by your other core value about this duality in yourself. So the moment you align both, you don't experience duality anymore. You experience presence. You are in the now. So this is not just some weird stuff idea. This is freaking science. It's how your brain works. Nomlak says, if playing games provides entertainment and happiness, is that not the logical thing to do, to keep doing? No. Let me tell you, the reason why games and entertainment provide you happiness is because you value comfort. The moment you value logic, instead of games and entertainment making you feel happy and comfort, logic makes you happy. And then suddenly games and entertainment makes you unhappy. That's the beauty of it. What makes you happy is not games and entertainment. What makes you happy is your flawed core value, which is comfort. And that translates into games and entertainment because that's what you learned when you grew up. But the moment you start seeing like, wait, games and entertainment and all these stuff do not provide for my safety, they don't really help me, and you're really connected to a negative feeling rather than having this dysfunctional belief like this is causing me happiness, you just say like, I don't want this shit, you push it away and you grab logic, and from then on, doing logical stuff will make you happy instead. So it's just a flawed paradigm. And some people that play a lot of games or are much in entertainment and distraction get maybe fat or whatever, they start experiencing it and go like, I don't want to play games, it doesn't make me happy, it can take a while, and then you experience so much dissonance that you go like, I don't want this comfort anymore, and you push it away. But it's better to come to that conclusion without having to go through 10 years of suffering. The point only says, Athene, my friend just made the click. I'm not very familiar with those videos, but he's going to drop the university just to come for you after he talked in Skype with you and learn things. Is that logical to drop university? Thank you for answer. Okay, let me tell you something, the Ponulis. This is a good question, and I'm going to give a very elaborate answer. And I'm going to first explain by defining 3 definitions. And I'm not going to go into the philosophical, like let's just assume objective reality is what applies to everyone, like gravity and such. Subjective reality is what you value. Let's say you value this bottle. And intersubjective reality is if many people value this bottle. If many people value paper, it becomes money. It gives it power. The intersubjective reality gives it its power. The problem is that humans have a very hard time differentiating between objective reality, which is gravity or food or whatever, and intersubjective reality. And as a result, when they submit to intersubjective reality, they assume they're being taken care of. The problem is stuff like university, for example, is an intersubjective reality. You're thought, if you go to school, you go to university, you have your degree, you find a job. But that's not true. It doesn't work like that. The real world works very different. The real world is you go apply for a job, they ask for experience. If you want to actually have a job or want to work, you're much better off learning by yourself than reading and parroting bullshit you read in the university. Of course, that doesn't apply to all branches. You have things like lawyers or doctors or whatever where you need to go to university. But for a lot of other things like IT or whatever, or even media, you don't need to go to university at all. And that's where it changes. When you start thinking for yourself, when you start thinking logical and critical thinking, then rather than just following the paths of this intersubjective reality that can screw you over whenever, you follow your own path by thinking critically, by thinking logical. And that's how you really achieve greatness. And that's why people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were dropouts. Not because they sucked, but because they had a vision. And if you have logic as your core value, you become a visionary. You don't just follow this intersubjective reality, you create intersubjective realities where other people start valuing it because of your vision. And that's why I'm achieving a psychological revolution, not because just I followed intersubjective realities, but because I understood what I am through objective reality and started applying it, reaching out to people and making it spread like fire. And that's the difference between me working a 9-to-5 job and me initiating a psychological revolution, and you can do the same. You can do exactly the same. The opponent says, if my clique says that I want knowledge, should I stay in university, not for degree, but for knowledge, and after that come get in contact with you after 2 years? The opponent is, if your clique says you want knowledge, then what you will do is why do I have to go to university for knowledge? I can learn it from the internet 10 times faster. You don't learn in university knowledge. Don't fool yourself. I went to university. I learned jack shit there. I didn't learn shit. Maybe if you learn physics, and even then. Even if you study physics, you know how much bullshit you gotta learn? You learn history and all this shit you don't even need? No, man. In university, you don't learn knowledge. In university, you learn how to conform. That's what you learn. You don't learn how to think for yourself in university. At least in my university, that was the case. But of course, if for some reason university is really good, then keep doing that. But I can tell you, Bill Gates, Elon Musk are warning that the jobs you guys are studying for might be taken over by computers. They're warning. It's happening already. Computers are taking over so many jobs. So many people are going to school for things that will just be extinct in the next 10 years because it's not part of your intersubjective reality. You don't question your future. You just look in your social environment. Everybody say good job, buddy, good job. You go haha, I'm good. I'm a good, nice student. Then you go to university, you're done with university, I'm really nice, validation, thank you, okay. Now I'm going to find a job, 9-to-5 job. Experience. No, I don't have experience, but I got a degree. I can shove it up my ass. But everybody in my environment said I only needed this. No, it doesn't work. Well, come on, I believe. No, get the fuck out. That's what people will say in jobs. Don't believe the fucking lie, man. That's the reality. And I can say it over and over and over again. Don't believe it. You guys know how fucking true this is. People with experience know that this is true. You're fucking working your ass off in university to be a nice, simple student. And you know what you learn in university? Let me tell you. University is only good for mainly one thing. And it's making connections. It's to find the right people that can get you a job. It's not even fucking what you learn at university. It's actually the people you know will help you further than a shitty degree. And it's really like that. Honestly, it's really like that. And you guys know it. So you can believe all these intersubjective realities and go through life and go yeah. And then you get fucked in the ass. It's really true. But what is also equally true is if you go okay, that's really interesting, Athene. I'm gonna drop out and play games all day. Then you're gonna get fucked even harder in the ass. So don't take this as a way of I can play. No. It's about thinking for yourself, go to your core value, embrace logic, switch that shit, and start your life. So don't use this as a way to go now I'm gonna play games all day. So what's the point, the goal of the scientific revolution? The point is to understand what we are. The point is to come to a point where we understand what we are, and doing so requires us to understand our history, understand our evolutionary biology, understand how the brain works, neuroscience, and by doing so we literally define what our purpose is. We understand what we are and why we're here, and it's because we want to evolve. It's about evolving. How Stardust evolved to humans and will evolve to even more advanced species, or one collective organism, or consciousness, or whatever. I don't know what the future will bring, but what I do know is that we are progressing. And this is all arguments, but it's about your core value. When you start loving logic, then you can go to the second step, which is understanding what is actually, your core value, what drives you. What is it that keeps you busy? Because as much as you can think and whatever, your subconscious emotional core is what derives all your behavior, and your rational thinking is a slave of that. So if you realize actually it's comfort that I desire the most, then you start just using your logic in order to get as much comfort. But the reason why you experience comfort to be so valuable is because you learned how to connect it to your reward center, because it gives you safety. You submit your will to what gives you safety. And comfort, that is for most people the case. But the moment you realize that, you go like, but wait, comfort doesn't really truly provide for my safety. It has caused a lot of dissonance, and in the future will cause even more dissonance. So what do? You start loading it negatively, more and more and more, and your inner child starts becoming despised by it and just pushes it away. And the moment it pushes away your current core value, that is comfort, it will grab logic. And then you go through a catharsis, and you start seeing things differently. You start becoming clear-headed, your problems go away, your social anxiety fades away. You just want to do what's logical. You want to spread it as well. You start seeing the beauty all around you. You stop taking things for granted because you realize that it's a privilege. Your identity just vanishes as well. It's literally the start of a new era for yourself and for humanity. And that's why we're going to go into a utopia. Mark my words, guys. We're going straight up to the utopia, because this insight will change the world forever. There's already people that have been clicking here and there all the time. I've actually been doing interviews with people all the time about clicking. And there's also a lot of people that actually ask how to click. I want to click. I want to go to this revolution. I want to experience it. Well, you guys can do it. Discord. There's people there that click. You can talk to them. They can help you. I can also help a bit. So that's how it is, man. We're finally, after billions of years of evolution, we have finally started to understand really what we are on an emotional level. We've never done it on an emotional level. It was always irrational. And look at what progress it has brought. The moment we adopt it on an emotional level, man, the world changes. Instead of wanting to watch TV and mindless entertainment, we want to understand. We want to progress. We want to evolve. We help other people. Okay, I didn't reread it, by the way. I'm just going to read it the first time. So, if logic is your core value, you automatically try to understand everything logically. If something doesn't add up, it can cause immense dissonance. The idea that there was nothing and suddenly the Big Bang happened seems very illogical. This has been the reason for many people to turn into religion, as it seems logical that there has to be a creator. Quite simple, right? Now it's stating that logic is our creator, in a sense, and that our understanding of it brought about all our advances. Someone could wonder who created logic. This is a question I've been wondering myself for a very long time, and has drawn me into learning about physics and quantum mechanics. I had a lot of different ideas, and you've made a documentary about it, Athene's Theory of Everything, where I explore different ideas that might give an answer to these kind of questions. A long time has passed, and I have gotten a lot more knowledgeable since then. I've had to rethink many of the theories and came up with the following one. I want to state, though, this is just a theory, but a satisfying one, that has put the dissonance around this question to sleep for me. When logic is your core value, you think fundamentally different. To further elaborate on this, I will define three concepts. The first is the objective reality, which is, for example, gravity and applies to all of us whether we like it or not. The other is the subjective reality. It is the value we give personally to, for example, an object with a certain memory to it. And then you have the intersubjective reality, the value many people give to something which can turn paper into money. We have the tendency to think the intersubjective reality is the objective reality. When logic becomes your core value, you look at the objective reality and don't assume the intersubjective reality is real anymore. So how this translates, for example, is questioning concepts we take for granted and use them to understand the world around us. A good example for this is time. We assume there is yesterday and tomorrow, even though every single moment we have ever experienced took place in the now. It is a very simple idea that is right in front of us every moment, yet we don't see it. Another one is how 1 + 1 = 2. Even though when we look at our own consciousness, we cannot just add up all our neurons and assume the sum is just adding up to the parts together. these observations, together with the weirdness of quantum mechanics, has made me look at the world fundamentally different. I try to understand the world by seeing everything as information instead. And then it becomes easier to find a logical answer to how we exist and why these logical patterns emerge. There are two scenarios that sound logically satisfying for the average person. One is there has always been nothing, and one is there's always been infinite chaos. This is simplified because always requires time and the Big Bang created time. Although the issue believers have is how nothing turned into something and how this process requires a creator. But if there was always infinite chaos and we can find a falsifiable, which means in science you can actually debunk it through experiments, a falsifiable explanation to this, how our consistent reality could emerge from this, it would help us set this inner conflict at ease. To build back on what I previously said, let's represent this infinite chaos as ones and zeros. How could our current reality emerge from this, and how would logic bring about all this beauty and structure? If you look at what is seemingly infinite chaos, you can already derive certain mathematical conclusions. For example, that 0 would appear around 50% of the time in infinity, and 1 would also appear 50% of the time in infinity. Same for if you take the combination 0, 1, it would appear 25%, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 0, 0 as well. What you already can see is the longer the binary number, the less frequent it appears within infinity. To understand the next step in my thinking, you need to understand the concept of compression algorithm. If you have a fully black background in Paint and save it as a BMP, it will be a much bigger file than when you save it as a JPEG. The reason for this is because the JPEG uses a compression algorithm that allows you to show the same black picture on the screen, but requires a lot smaller binary number. So now imagine if this black picture would be instead our consciousness that would emerge from this infinite chaos. It would naturally be the one that is most compressed, as it would be the most likely to happen. And this is one explanation on how everything around us seems to follow these specific patterns, as these are merely the compression algorithm that are brought about due to probability applied to infinite chaos. If this would be true, it also has other consequences. One, for example, that the number 1 and a billion zeros is actually smaller than one that contains more information. You can wonder and say, if that was to be true, why do I experience time? And then if everything is just information, then everything should happen simultaneously in the now. Well, this is not that well written, but in order to experience the illusion of time, the only thing you need is your current consciousness has to contain the information of the past. What this would also mean is that the subjective reference frame, which is your consciousness, is responsible for the probabilities around you. The chances of a red car driving by is much higher now than if you would be born 2,000 years ago, for example. You might wonder then, but if this was to be true, then there would be an infinite versions of me, coexisting simultaneously, and that every decision you have ever made has already happened in a parallel universe. Funny thing is, this is actually one interpretation of quantum mechanics called the many-world interpretation, which many scientists believe. One way to show evidence for this theory is to prove, for example, that gravity would be an entropic force. Entropy is how everything gradually declines into a disorder because it is more probable to do so. Same would apply to much of the other logical patterns we see around us. They would emerge because they are the more probable ones to occur in infinite chaos rather than because they have been created. So this explanation can tell you why you don't need a creator of logic. This explanation tells you that if there would be infinite chaos, then logic, the compression algorithm, is responsible for us to exist. I explained this to scientists, by the way, because you can build math on this. This is not just a simple idea. This is not just some theory that is a fluff. No, you can turn this, you can translate this into math. I wouldn't be surprised that scientists in the future will build their theory on this and find a theory of everything based on this shit. So there you go. Logic doesn't need a creator. It would naturally emerge from infinite chaos. I don't know how many people get it, but I'm just saying, this is me thinking about this stuff. I didn't go and study mathematics. I didn't go and finish my PhD in physics or quantum mechanics. Imagine if someone that actually has logic as their core value and goes through all these education would think about this. He'd be the next Einstein.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat.